Oftentimes there will be occasion where you will want to write code for the same control but affect multiple properties for that same control. This demonstration program will focus on that aspect. The program that I have created consists of 3 objects. One is the message box, create message. One is the form itself. And there is also a label that you cannot see at this point because I have made it invisible. Now, when you're working with a control that is not visible at design time, it sometimes can be a challenge. But there is a way that you can access these controls even though you cannot physically touch them with the mouse. And that is by going to the Properties window and clicking the drop down arrow at the top of the Properties window, which will reveal a list of controls or objects that are currently on the form, including the form itself. And there you see the label I was referencing is called Label 1, and then the Create Message button is called Message Button. Now if I want to do something at design time with the Label 1, I can simply click and then you see where its location is on the form. And if I wanted to, for example, give it a border style at this point, I could do so by going to the border style property and changing the none to fixed 3D. I could also change the auto size property from true to false, and therefore you can see the original size that this label was when it was drawn onto the form. Now let's take a look at how you can affect the same control, in this case Label 1, and you can affect multiple properties in code without having to repeat the control name every time you want to reference it. So I'll first change the auto size property back to true. I will take away the border style, and for your reference note that the text is empty. There is no text in the label. Now the code is going to be associated with the Create Message button. So I will double click and that will reveal the event procedure window for the message button. The code I wish to write is as follows. I want to provide you the entire code so that you can see it and be able to recognize the true advantage of creating this structure. This is using something called the with structure, W-I-T-H, and you can see the with and then the end with statements. Now with and end with are key words, and everything is in between the words with and end with is referred to as the with block. Now the control name immediately after the word with, in this case Label 1, is the control that the following properties will be associated with. Now if I were to write this code one line at a time, it would look something like this. Label 1 dot visible equals true. And then if I want to change the foreground color of that label, I would need to write Label 1 dot forecolor equals color blue, or whatever color I might want. And then the third item would be Label 1 dot text, and then the message I want to appear in the label. Now as you can see, this is requiring 3 lines of code. And each time I write the code, I have to repeat the name of the control. Label 1, Label 1, and Label 1. On the other hand, I could accomplish the exact same task with simply typing Label 1 once after the with statement, which then says everything that I list next is to reference Label 1. Now note the syntax that's required, and that is the dot before visible, forecolor, and the dot text. just like you would need the dot to separate the object from the property if you were to write them on 3 individual lines, you need the dot here so that the with statement understands that this is associated with the control that's immediately precedes it. So if you had, say, 10 or 12 properties that you wanted to change for a particular control, repeating the name of the control each time would get a bit monotonous and tedious. Where in this structure you could simply write it once and then list the following properties. So I will delete the code that's not necessary at this point, and we will test our code. And when I click on the create message, the code we just saw will be executed, and the 3 things occurred. That is, it became visible, it became blue, and it also became filled with the content of the message, here I am. So this is a very handy coding tip and shortcut method that you can use whenever you find yourself repeating the same control over and over again. Of course, now keep in mind this has to occur while you're within the same event procedure.